welcome to this edition of Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I'm Dustin, and today I have the pleasure of being here with Gennady Borukhovich, who is the CTO and co-founder of Intuary. Thank you so much for being here, Gennady.
Thank you for having it.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is that you're part of Intuary, which I want you to tell us a little bit more about, but you have also created a literacy app called Farfaria.
Yes.
So before we get into the app, can you explain what Intuary is?
Sure. So Intuary is a startup.
Okay.
We're based in San Francisco and New York.
Okay.
And we have two applications. Farfaria is one of them. Verbally is another. And so Farfaria, as you said, is a literacy application.
Okay.
And Verbally is an application to help people who are verbally impaired, who have Lou Gehrig's disease and others, and helps them speak.
Wow,
So.
that's pretty amazing. How long has the startup been in existence?
About 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so these are your first two apps?
Yes.
Do you plan to do more, or?
Right now, our major focus is on Farfaria.
Okay. So can you explain what Farfaria
Yes.
is?
So Farfaria is sort of like a Netflix for children's stories on the iPad.
Okay.
We've got over 300 stories in the application, all available with a subscription, and we add new ones every single day.
Wow. Where do you get these stories?
So we work with about several hundred authors, illustrators, and voice actors all over the world to create the stories. A lot of them are classics that are sort of public domain, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, stuff like that are familiar titles. And then some of them are original ideas from our team, from the authors, and from the content creators.
Okay.
And we work with all of these to create them, and we publish them inside Farfaria.
And so you said it's like Netflix, but for children's books?
Yes.
So for those 5 people who are not familiar with Netflix, explain exactly what that means.
Sure. So when you download the application, you get to try it out, read several books, and then at some point you subscribe. And it's $3.99 a month, sort of the price of a latte
Okay.
at Starbucks. And every month you get access to all of our books, and then we add about 5 new per week.
Okay.
And you get full access. You don't have to buy each story, children's story, every time your kid wants to read. Right?
So it's $3.99 and I can read it, or
all of our books.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. If you read them all in one night, it's $3.99.
That's awesome. So what is the age range that Farfaria books are geared toward?
So our sort of official is 2 through 9.
Okay.
But I know folks who, we have a friend who his wife is pregnant, and he's reading it to the unborn child so far.
Oh, that's so cool.
We've got, really young kids. We've got a lot of picture books. So parents buy a lot of these sort of hardbound picture books with just one picture, and those can get costly. And they only really use them for about 6 months. But we've got a lot of those stories that even the younger kids can use. And then we range up to sort of 8, 9-year-olds that have longer text and more complicated stories.
So this is a very cool app in that it grows with your child.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you said, it can be the board books, the traditional board books can, once your child is done with those, you sort of have to get rid of them.
Right.
And then you have to start buying more books. So this is great because you don't really waste.
Yep.
You just keep buying more.
Yeah.
Is the intent for Farfaria 2 through 9, and that's what you're going to focus on, or will you go beyond that, or still in the...
It's sorry to interrupt.
No.
It's still to be determined. It's still pretty early. Right now we're really focused on this age range, and really getting kids in very young. Beyond 9 years old, you get into chapter books. And that's a very different type of publishing, certainly possible. Other people do it all the time, but it is a very different type of business at that point.
Okay.
So that's not to say we won't get into it, but it's probably far down the line.
So what interested you in literacy? Like why Farfaria? Why this particular app? Why literacy app?
So I think, there's a lot of, it's a very important mission to me. When I was a kid, my mom tried to read to me a lot. And despite her best efforts, I've never really become a reader. And even to this day, I'm a pretty slow reader, and it's because I didn't read as a kid enough. And so it's pretty important for me to help other kids read. Obviously, reading is very important to your development, education, and sort of hopefully your success as a human being, right? And so for me, this mission is very important because we can potentially reach millions of kids and help them read and help them become better readers. So.
That's great. took your own personal experience and created an app for it.
Yeah.
Did you create, so you're part of Intuary. Is it a big startup? You said you have San Francisco and in New York people there. Is it?
So we're about 10 people now.
Okay.
And we've been growing over the last 2 years. When I joined, it was really just myself and my partner, and we've been growing the team little by little. And we created a design team and created a development team, as well as a content team. Okay. So it is very much a team effort. When we started out, it was myself and my partner, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of the technology guy, I'm the developer. Okay. And then we brought on our creative chief, who he's in charge of all the design of the application, as well as he's the art director for all of the stories.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Meaning that he determines what type. I mean, I'm sure he's not doing all the right, but yeah. he's selecting the type of art that goes with the books, or
he's selecting, providing feedback to the artists,
okay.
Working with the rest of the content team to sort of on the idea creation for the stories and the direction of the stories. But he is in charge of all of the sort of art direction for all of the stories. The feedback is a big part of it.
Okay.
Our artists give us art. Him and his team provide feedback based on what their desires are, what works best in the app, and stuff like that. And the artists get better at it as a result, and we get better quality.
Okay. And so since you're the CTO, I take it that you are probably the person who, if you have not developed all the code for the app, probably a substantial amount of the code for the app.
Yeah, so for the first year or so, it was mostly me. We had help from a friend for a little bit, just to sort of get us to release. And then after we released, we've been building the development team little by little.
Okay.
But yeah, so I worked on a lot of the code.
Okay.
But it's certainly not just me. There's the design, as you can see in the application when you get to it, it's very design heavy. And that's a tremendous amount of work.
And you mentioned that, so I've been to the app and I've seen like the first page, and I noticed like for this month, for example, you had some titles that were geared toward Black History Month. So how do you said, how many titles do you currently have?
So I think as of today, we have something like 340 titles in there.
Wow.
And like I said, every day we release a new story, sometimes more.
Okay, and so it sort of rotates. So if people, if I recall, we're going to look at the app later. Yeah. But if I recall, there's like a what's new or something, so you know what the new apps are.
Yes.
What has been the feedback from people who have actually used the app?
Very good.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard a lot of really great feedback. Folks who tell us that their kid can now tell the difference between the different type of buses for the younger kids. Somebody else told me that their first graders reading at like a third or fourth grade level.
Wow.
And so they love it from a development point of view.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm also hearing is that kids find it really fun, which reading and kids and fun is not something you always hear.
That's true.
But it's great to hear, because when kids find reading fun, they're going to become addicted readers.
Exactly.
Right? And so we're hearing really great feedback. One of the other things that kids love is, as you'll see in the application, we have a map. And the way you get to different stories, aside from our featured screen,
mm-hmm.
is you explore different lands in the map. So we have Classics Grove, which has all the classics like Snow White. We've got Bedtime Bluffs, which is where a lot of the bedtime stories are. And so kids go and explore, zoom into the map, to find these stories, and they love that. It's really fun for them. Wow,
that's pretty amazing. In addition to the parents telling you about how their children are interacting with it, are you finding that children are basically reading to themselves, or are they like reading with their parents, or is it a combination?
It is a combination. We're hearing parents will love reading to their kids for bedtime. Right. And at that point, it's the parent reading to a child. Kids who are sort of 5, 6 years old who are developing their reading ability, mm-hmm. They might be reading to their parents.
Okay.
For the younger kids, or even for the kids who are developing, we've got a Read to Me feature. So every single story in our application, you can hit a button and it reads to you.
Wow.
And we've got professional voice actors who record this stuff. And the child can actually hear every page or every word read to them. So it's really a combination. And so a lot of parents will give the iPad to their child and let them read on their own, or have it read to them, and not necessarily have to sit with a child. You'd be surprised how like a 1-year-old can really use the iPad. It's pretty amazing to watch.
I would definitely, I could see that, because I see children with the iPhone, anything with an eye in front of it, they're able to manipulate it.
Yeah,
those kind
it's
of
really
things.
incredible.
So do you have an idea of like when you think about the stories that come in, like, do you and your team, do you have an idea of like, okay, we want more stories about animals or more stories
Mm-hmm.
about dinosaurs, or how do you keep the balance, like,
Sure.
of the different stories that you present?
Yeah, so our content team is really focused on that, and so they look at things like what movies are coming out, right? What what
okay.
events like Black History Month, what Anti-Bullying Week.
Right.
I think the other day was Day of Kindness or Act of Kindness Day, right? So things like that, and we will feature, but also start working on new content for those events. But also we constantly look at our content and say, we're really light in this area. So for a little bit, I think we're light in the for stories for the 4 to 5-year-old kids.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So we focused our efforts on creating stories for those to fill in those gaps. And there's always going to be gaps.
Right.
So we work really hard and really focus on trying to fill those and have a really wide range of content, from religious type content, like you mentioned. It's Black History Month, so we
Right.
worked on content for Black History Month, for Valentine's Day, for different holidays. So we really focus on that stuff.
Okay, we have about a minute left in this segment, but just in case people are wondering, what's the name of the app and where can they find it?
Sure. So the application is Farfaria, and you can go to farfaria.com or go to the iTunes App Store and search for Farfaria or Children's Stories, and you'll see ours. It's the one with the F.
Great. So when we come back, we're going to actually see the app in progress and sort of play around with it.
Awesome.
So at this point, we're going to say bye for a few seconds, and we'll be right back and show you the app.
Local government, local educational institutions, and local community members all use cable access TV to communicate their message. They depend upon it as an affordable means of outreach. Public educational and government access television empowers local government agencies, individuals, and groups to use the media to speak directly to their constituents in a more direct and cost-effective way. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Hi, and welcome back to Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and I have the pleasure of being here today with Gennady Borukhovich, and he is going to demonstrate the Farfaria app that he has helped create. So this is it. This is the app, Farfaria.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it now that we can see it?
Yeah, so when a user, child, parent, open up the application, most of the time they see this. This is sort of our home base, where we show the user what are the newest stories, what are the featured stories.
Okay.
And so what you'll see is the story that just came out is about money. And yesterday we had a President's Day story.
That's very cool.
We had Explore the World, and the child gets to play with this map that we talked about, and the child can go tap somewhere, and it zooms them right into this world, into this land. And in this case, we went to Classics Grove. We open up Classics Grove, and you can see all of the stories that are in there. You can sort by different ways, title, newest, so on and so forth.
I love the graphics. It's beautiful. It's really great.
We've spent countless hours developing this. And then, when it's bedtime, they can go to Bedtime Bluffs, tap again, and get to that world. Additionally, we go to our favorites. And so all these stories are, kids love reading the same story over and over again. So they can go into their favorites.
And these are the favorites from Farfaria's perspective, or from the individual
From
child?
the individual. So the child will add a story to their favorite. So
Okay.
let's open this one up. It's one of my favorites. So Ashapattle and the giant sea monster. So the graphics in this story are really just phenomenal.
Wow.
And you can turn the page, if you want to add it or remove it from your favorites, there's a button right up top,
Okay.
making it a little easier to see. And you can hit, let's come back here because it's kind of fun. Not sure if you're going to hear it.
Long ago, a giant monster known as the Meester Stoorworm rose out of the sea.
That
So-
is awesome.
Yeah, and so these voice actors, they put a lot of time into this and really give it some feeling into the story. So, and all of it, like I said before, all of our stories are available in Read to Me.
Okay.
And have Read to Me. We have things like Wheels on the Bus, which is a very familiar one.
Yes.
So,
The wheels on the bus.
Wow.
so that's a familiar one. And we do have some of these sing-alongs from a publisher we're working with, Twin
Okay.
Sisters Publishing.
Wow.
And so we have a pretty
These-
wide range of content.
And this is great because even if a child is not familiar with the words, like what a word means, listening to the story along with the words helps, incorporate that meaning, like,
Yeah.
round, wheels, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's really it's pretty simple for
Okay.
parents and kids to use.
And so it's only available on the iPad.
That's right.
And it's, so you can just go to iTunes and get it. And
Yep.
it's, as you said earlier, which is a perfect explanation, it's a program that's like Netflix for children's
That's
books.
right.
And it's between the ages of 2 and 9 at
Yep.
the current moment. Okay.
Yep.
That's really nice. I like it a lot. I mean, it's very bright. I like the stories. I like how it's current. So, and that's really cool too. So, is there a goal for the map? Is there any type of goal? Like if you go to all of them,
Right.
something happens, or is it just you just go to each one?
Not right now. Yeah, right now it's really sort of a free-for-all. The experience we've really tried to create is the experience of a child going to a library and sort of letting loose and being able to open up any story. It's not a bookstore, and we've really worked really hard to make it not like a bookstore, right? I think one of the problems that I see with an online bookstore is a child wants to read, and they have to say, "Mom, can I buy this story?" Right?
Oh,
And so
okay.
it's sort of a discouraging feeling. And with
Right.
our application, child gets in, parent has to make a decision whether or not they want to purchase once. And after that, the child can read any one of our 300 plus stories.
Wow.
And pretty soon it'll be 400 and then 500,
Right.
right? And it's sort of an endless library for kids that, they can just get in and read without any roadblocks.
Right, and it's really very reasonably priced at $3.90. What did you say? $3.99.
$3.99 a month, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like you said. That's the cost of a latte.
Exactly.
So it's great. Okay, thank you so much for excuse me. Thank you for showing us that. That's great, and it's very easy to manipulate, and I can just imagine lots of 2 and 4, and
Yep.
just flipping through there.
Yeah, we hear kids love exploring the map. They love sort of diving right in, and some parents when they want to get their child to sleep, and it actually slows them down a little bit because the kid is like, oh, I want to have fun in the map,
Oh.
right? But that's what the
True.
favorites are for.
So you can just direct them to, this is your favorite, we're going to read a bedtime
Right.
story, and that's
Right.
it. Oh, that's great. I know you mentioned a little bit about your other app. I
Mhm.
know that it's more about people who have disability.
Verbal disabilities, yeah. So folks who unfortunately have certain disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, and they lose their ability to speak, they can use our application verbally, also available on the iTunes App Store for free.
Okay.
And it helps them speak. It has predictive text and a word grid that makes it really great to help them speak. And so, we've heard stories where folks are able to stay at work for months longer than they normally would have because of the application, and it's really, really great cause.
And can you remind us what the name of the application?
Sure, it's verbally
Verbally,
Yeah.
and it's also available
on
in
the
iTunes.
iTunes. Yep.
Okay. So getting back to Farfaria, I'm curious, since you said that you were not a reader when you were growing up, how has this changed you by being able to give literacy to all of these children?
It's a good question. I think, it definitely makes me feel great. We were at a reading event several weeks ago to benefit the children at Sandy Hook. Elementary.
Sure, yes.
And so one of the stories that was read was from Farfaria. We were able to meet kids, and children who came to the reading were able to, mess around with Farfaria. And it really was an incredible feeling to see a few children get in front of the iPad, and really their parent had to like pull them away, right? And it's an amazing feeling watching children love what you've created,
Wow.
right? And when I hear stories about children who are developing better, and I can't say it's completely because of Farfaria, excuse me, but when I hear stories about them developing better and loving it, it really makes me feel great. So it's definitely helped me out, and knowing that we're helping other children.
That's so awesome. That's really great. One thing I did want to ask you, how did you come up with the name Farfaria?
That's a good question. We've spent months sort of brainstorming, and we were really close to another name that a competitor has a similar name, and they had already gotten it. So we sort of went back to the drawing board, and we worked with a few folks for this huge brainstorming process. And there was a lot of different sort of aspects to this process.
Mm-hmm.
We came up with something like 900 different names. Farfaria
Wow.
was not on that list.
Really?
Yeah, and so the term far away, it's sort of this great feeling of like exploration, and Farfaria ended up on that list based on sort of riffing off, and then we just
Okay.
talked to lots and lots of parents and gave them sort of our options and tried to see how they react and sort of what comes to mind.
Right.
And so Farfaria sort of bubbled up to the top as the one that gave the right imagery. We think not too hard to say, but really has that mystical sort of land exploration feel to it.
Yes, which is very consistent with the graphics.
Yes.
And like on the map, very much so. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
We had the map before we had the name.
Oh, really? Okay.
So in a lot of ways, the name had to fit sort of the experience that the child sees.
Okay.
If we just called it like Storybook app, but it was this mystical land, the effect might not have been as good.
Okay. So what's next for Farfaria?
So we're really focused on creating more innovative features for the application. We're focused on marketing, making sure that every child out there who can gets access to Farfaria.
Okay.
And like I said, innovative features and great content for the kids to love reading.
That's awesome. I love that. As a frequent reader, and I have a son who likes to read too, that's great to see that there are apps like this that are not just that are very rich in content, and I appreciate that. Like yesterday you had President's Day. It's like it's current, so it's
Yeah.
not. So if you go there, you know that it's dynamic, so
Right.
that it'll be something different each time.
Yeah,
you go
I think,
there.
I remember an early conversation with me and my co-founder when we were sort of really just figuring out what this thing is, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things we talked about was we want to make sure that kids know that whenever they come to Farfaria every single day, there's something new happening, right? And I think we've created that, as you
Yes.
have noted. Every day that you come back, there's something new happening, right? And it is, in a lot of ways, it is a world. So why shouldn't there be something happening in this world, right?
That's true. Yes, because things don't stay the same
Exactly.
every day. So the app is
Yep.
very good at doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any apps or are there any books that are your favorite on Farfaria?
Yes. So if you look at my business card, which I can show you,
Excuse me.
it's each of our business cards have our favorite characters on them, and so my favorite story is Donkey and Mule.
Excuse me.
And it's really one of our earliest stories that we worked with creators to create the story. So it's sort of near and dear to my heart because it is one of the first ones.
Oh,
But
okay.
also it's just a really fun story about a donkey and a mule going to the fair and bringing fireworks to it. And it's got a really great lesson. So
I can imagine what that lesson is: fireworks, fair, a mule.
Yep. You'll have to read Farfaria to learn the lesson.
So you're able to work with the writers, the authors,
Mm-hmm.
and determine like with some of the stories, or how does that work?
Yeah, so our content team is really focused, and they talk to our writers and illustrators and sort of give them work with them, either if the writer has an idea or if our team has an idea, and they try to communicate as best as they can sort of the vision behind the story. And then there's a process of going back and forth with feedback for
Okay.
both the literature as well as the art. and so they work laboriously for several months on each story, and so and some of the conversations you hear around the office are really fun, things you'd never think you'd be talking about as an adult.
I can imagine. We have about a minute left. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
Sure. Like I said, we're really focused on getting Farfaria out there to as many children as possible, and we want kids to love reading and be addicted to reading. So go to farfaria.com, click the link to download it, check it out. Please let us know if you guys have any feedback. We're constantly listening and want to talk to as many users as possible, children and adult, to learn more about how we can make Farfaria better.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
That was I really, really love the app, so thank you so much for showing it to us. And that is it for this edition of Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will see you next time. Bye.